You know what a class is, right? So we have a class. And whatever you decide to call this. I'll call this class person. So within this class, we said we should think about some attributes about this class. So I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna keep I'm just gonna put name and maybe your date of birth. I'll keep it as a string for now. How do you think the computer stores datetime? There's not such a primitive type called datetime. Well, based on your homework or your first project, you enter seconds, right? That's how the computer stores datetime, in seconds. And starts on January 1st, 1900, and counts the number of seconds until now. So that will be type long. And then milliseconds are stored separate. It will be 128-bit. But just for a regular datetime, we use a long. And then it converts it into years, and then months, and then days, and then time. But we're gonna do it for this purpose in this class. Oh, what else? Let's see, this person gets money, so I bought life insurance and they asked me what is your net worth? I'm like, I don't even know what that means. You calculate it, I have no idea. All I want is my mortgages and everything paid if I die. So anyways, so this is our blueprint, right? And this is attributes specific for each person. If we do So I have a main method. Can I do this? Can I do that? Why not? I'm sorry, what? Well, I had it here. And anything that's declared in that set of parentheses, it could be used in the inner set of parentheses. So These are my outer and these are inner, so why can't I use it there? Come on, explained that last time. So the class is a blueprint, right? Yeah, so we had a car and we made a bunch of cars, right? So we said the cars itself, we call them an instance, right? And the instance objects can refer back to the class, but the class cannot refer back to the instance objects, right? So when something is at the class level, which is at the blueprint, what do we use to identify that?
To identify the class?
Yeah, the class. So what do we use to say this is in the blueprint? This is my blueprint. I have the count field, right? So how do I refer to or create a field into the blueprint rather than in each car that I made? What's a keyword? Hmm? No, the keyword we used was this. So what does the static do? Remember? That's what I want to revisit this to make sure you understand this. So static means it's at the blueprint level, it's at the class level. So how many copies of this static exist? Just one. I could have 0 persons or I could have 1,000,000 people. Still only one static, right? So net worth, is it per person or is for everybody? Per person. So a static field or method cannot access an instance method, right? So this wouldn't work. It'll work if I put the word static here. Then the network will be static and the method static so they can get along. However, that means there'll only be one network for everybody, which wouldn't be true. Everybody works different. Supposedly, to me, everybody's priceless, but so how do we do this? So I need to create an instance, right? So I declare first the variable type. Oops, no color. I'm gonna say me, comma, you. So there's 2 instances. And then can I do me dot net worth? Can I do that now? So what do you think? How much memory do you think these 2 variables are allocating?
As far as
Yeah, how much? How much? When I declare this line of code, the computer hasn't seen anything below. Computer is looking at this line, and it says allocate memory, right? And declaring a variable. How much memory did I allocate?
like numbers wise, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, is that using like the number keys on the keyboard? The zeros and ones?
How many bits? So, do you need coffee, guys?
Yes.
So we have our variable types, right? And we have an int, we have a long, we have a double, we have a character, we have a boolean, and we had an object. So tell me how much memory does an int allocate?
32.
Okay. What about a long? And a double? And a character? Boolean? An object? Alright. So, is a person, what type it is? Is it a primitive or an object? It's an object. So how much memory did it allocate? Okay, so, and the double, how much does it allocate? So can I do me that name two and put those two in 64 bits? So if this allocates 64, and this is 64, and these are variable size. So can I do that? So what do I need to do before I can do that? So let's word it differently. So I have my RAM. Here's 1,000. I'm gonna do 100 increments. The computer says, or you said, allocate me. So this is gonna be me. This is gonna be you. And he's gonna replace it with the addresses, right? This is me and you. So what's the content of these variables? What's in here? What are those called?
Null.
A null, right? So, let's say I don't have a person, but I have another object that you're familiar with. It's called scanner. We call it keyboard, right? So the scanner will be here, the keyboard, and also has a null, right? So what do you have to do before you can use the scanner keyboard? How do you create an object? I can hear you. So before you can do keyboard.next int, you needed to do something, right? You need to create it. How do you create it?
Just understand, right?
Which any object?
Public class. Public class and an object.
That's how you do with the scanner?
Oh no. You have to import the scanner.
Well, okay, it's already imported. It's fine. Yeah. Alright. Alright, I imported it, but before I can do keyboard.next int, what did you do? Look at your code.
You tried the scanner name.
Hmm?
New scanner?
Yeah. How do you allocate? With new, right? So before I can do this, I have to say I had a constructor, right? Me equals new version. And what does the new do? It allocates the memory. I'll assume this is the chunk. Reads the person. And returns the address. Right? And then me has the address. Right? So far so good? Is it coming back to you? You had too many margaritas last weekend? Alright. So, in order to use you here, I have to do the same thing, right? I have to do the new version. And I can do and your net worth is whatever. We're gonna give you $1 billion. What's that? Well, as many zeros as you want. So and then I make this class, I compile it and sell it, publish it in the internet or whatever. You think you're gonna be the next Bill Gates, right? But then I'm using your class and I said, well, actually your net worth is not that much money. I wanna make it $1. And you're gonna say, well, you can't do that. Arbitrarily change what each person's worth. What if it's not the net worth? What if it's somebody's salary? Or somebody's paycheck? Should be allowed. Actually, like how much taxes you need to pay, it would be nice if I could just say me that tax equals negative $1 million and then I get a nice refund check, right? So how can we prevent that from happening? So if I type this in my IDE, it'll work, but it's wide open, right? And we want to protect that. So how do we protect that? How do we protect primary information for each person? So we change this private. So if we change this to private, what happens here now? We get these red squiggly lines underneath. Gives us an error saying you can't do that anymore. You cannot change. So how do we access it? So this, we call them fields or instance variables or attributes or property, whatever we commonly known as instance variables. Well, at least that's what I call them. So I can't do that anymore. So let me make some room here. So now I need to provide a way to access those things, right? I need a way to set their value or change their value. And also I need a way to read what it is. So now I'm going to give you an introduction to methods. So the method syntax, we're going to talk about methods. Okay. The syntax says you have the access level first, which means it's public or private. Then static or non-static. And then return type. And then their name, and then parameter list. So, and after the parameter list, we got the curly opening and closing brackets. You've been using one method, which is the public static void main, and it has parameters, the argument as a string array. So, we're going to create our first method. The difference between private and public is who can access it, right? Private means only anybody between these two curly brackets can access it. Public means it can be accessed from anywhere. That's why the class is public. So at some point I'm going to teach you about private classes, but that's way ahead. So the first thing we're going to make this method, do we want people to access it or not? Sure. So we're going to start with public. So, static or non-static? To make something static, you know how to do it, right? We put the word static like in the main function. But when it's non-static, what do? You put non-static? No, you just leave it blank. If the computer doesn't see the word static, that means it's non-static. Right? It's like when we're doing the gender, we use a boolean to say it's male. If it's not male, then it must be female, right? So the access level will be public. This whole two things, they're more called, there could be more stuff than just static or non-static, but I'm not gonna give that to you yet. They're called modifiers, basically. It's public, the access level, and the static or non-static. And there's another modifier that we're gonna talk about after the midterm. All right, so it's non-static. We'll leave it blank. And return type. So the main is a method that we run, but doesn't return anything. It doesn't give you anything back. So what is the type, return type of the function main? What is it? Void. So this void means it actually returns something. It returns this number. It returns a null. And I'll show you how the memory actually works. Yeah.
So all the time when you put void, it's always going to return a void.
In memory, yes. And then we give it a name. What name do we want it to be? Well, I want to work with this field in net worth. So I'm going to have something called set net worth. What we usually do is pick the variable name and precede it with the word set. So that's how you're going to change it. So now the parameter list. Parameter list, how do we know it's a method? Because it's in parentheses, right? So I'll open and close parentheses. Okay. So this method, we're going to use it to change our net worth. But in order to do that, we need to pass a value to that method. If you remember, when you look at your void main in the parentheses, it has something in there, right? It says string, and then it has args, which is short for arguments, and it has the square brackets. We'll talk about those in about 2 weeks. So, what type is my net worth? It's a double. So I want to use a double this time. And this is like declaring a variable. Now how do we declare a variable? We use variable type and then space variable name, right? So I'm gonna call this value or whatever you wanna call it. So if I look at this without anything else, it'll look like a variable, right? Notice there's not semicolons though. And then after my parameter list, I got the curly brackets. So in here, I can do this net worth equals value. So does a double take negative numbers? Yeah. I can do any double variable. The computer doesn't know it's not supposed to take negative numbers. Is your net worth negative? Should it be negative? Right? We shouldn't allow that, right? So what can we do? You learned something last week. What is it called? What, 2 weeks before? Oh, before switch, what else can we use? We use a if statement, right? A conditional statement. So we can say we only allow people to change the net worth if it's positive, right? So we can say if the value is greater than 0, then you can allow the net worth to change. That will prevent from having negatives. Something you could not do before when you have this as public, right? First, good? All right, the next thing is I want to be able to read these. Maybe I'm not able to change your net worth. Maybe I add code to set security who can change stuff like that, right? But you want to know how much a person's worth. So we make a method to get that information. And we use the same syntax. So our access level is public still. Is static or non-static? Well, it would be non-static because it's for each person, because we're going to access that non-static variable. But what should be the return type? Well, what variable do we want to find out the value? The net worth, right? What type is that? The double. So my method should return a double. Make sense? So now, it's a double. Okay, and what name do you want to call this? I'm going to call it get net worth. All right. And parameter list. It always has to have a parameter list. That means it always needs a parenthesis, right? Do you need to give something to the program or to your class in order to get the value of this variable? No. So it will be just open and close parentheses. Basically, my parameter list is empty. And then what's the next thing? Oh, the curly bracket, right? And now the computer sees there's a type here, it's not a void. So it doesn't expect a null, it expects something else. So when the computer expects something else, we use this keyword, return. This keyword return says whatever is after the word return, it could be an expression, it could be a variable, it could be a hard-coded number. So now return to whoever calls this method. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to return net worth. So now, if I have a main function here, I'm gonna put it in the same line just to save space here. Now I can do U, and if I do dot, a list of available methods and properties come up, and you will see this too, set and get. So I'm gonna do this set net worth. I'm gonna say worth $1 million. You know, their expression to say, I feel like $1 million. Right now, nowadays, that's not a lot of money. Maybe like in 1950s was a really lot of money. When you can buy a house for $5,000 and a car for $1,000. So, what if I do this next? I repeat that method, set net worth, but I do negative $1. What will be your net worth at that point? No. 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 Computer reads top to bottom, right? Looks at this here. Says you creates a new person, does things in memory, right? Now it's at this line. The computer doesn't know what's the line before and the line after, right? It says set net worth $1 million. So where's set net worth? Oh, it's right here. So the value, whatever I put in this parenthesis, is what gets copied into this variable. So it's like a local variable with an initial value, whatever is passed. Now any parameter inside a method, and you gotta remember this, is treated as a local variable. Okay? Every parameter, when you pass the value from here to here, every variable is treated as a local variable. And it has an initial value of whatever it passed. So it's just like a local variable that you don't declare here, you declare inside the parentheses, and it has a value already set for you. Okay? So it says it passes $1 million on this variable value has $1 million inside and goes inside this method. It says, is $1 million greater than 0? Yes. Then sets net worth to $1 million. Here's my parentheses. I'm sorry, my curly bracket. Guess what happened? It goes back to where it was called from. It goes back here. I'm done with this line. So I go to the next line. The computer has no idea what it just do. What was the line before? Doesn't know what's after. It says set net worth -1. So it goes to wherever the net worth is, and it says set the value to -1. Is -1 greater than 0? No. Just goes out, right? Returns to where it was called from. So what's my net worth at this point? Still $1 million, right? Because I didn't change it. So if I do system that out, that print line, and then I print what's your net worth, I can do u dot get net worth. So when the computer sees this line, it's going to do the parentheses first, right? So it's going to see this u dot get net worth first. So it's going to call that method, it's going to come here, and it's going to return that variable. What's the value of this variable? Still $1,000,000. So it goes out, and now it says print line $1,000,000. So, let me erase this. Now, I have restricted, I only did one field. I have restricted what the access is going to be for this private variable called net worth, right? So if you want to access this variable, you have to use these two methods, right? Well, you have to use method. And this sets the value of my net worth. And this gets the value of the net worth, right? So we call this setter, because it has the word set, or mutator. And this one that gets the value is called getter or accessor. And when you protect a variable and control the access through the setters or getters, we call that encapsulation. I mean, you knew that already, it's in your book anyways, right? Alright, let's take 10 minutes.